Thank you, Carol, and good morning, everybody who's out there. So we have a very unique opportunity here. We are generally, when we record these course webcasts, we kind of walk through purpose of the course, where it exists, in an effort to try to help people pick the right course for them. We are about a month away from our first beta run of ICS612. And with ICS612, we are really doing quite a bit with hardware in the room. So prior to, while betas always have some rough edges and some things for us to fix, and it's a learning opportunity for everybody from the author team to the instructor team and the students to contribute and help make the course better. With this course specifically, we wanted to take some of the rough edges out. So because there's so much hardware, we are staging the course in a classroom environment in Utah. So the entire instructor author team is here, and we've been working away all week, making sure we have all the right cables and power cords and that the labs all function and everything talks together pretty well. So for this webcast, we have all the instructors and all the authors and everybody who's involved in this course physically here. So at a point in time, you're going to get to hear from each one of these gentlemen that's on the screen. I'm going to walk through some of the history kind of where this course fits. And really, these sessions are recorded primarily as it gets put on the course webpage, and as people are trying to decide, hey, based on my current skill set and job that I perform, which ICS course is the right course for me? Should I go to ICS 410, 456, 515, or 612? And you know, which one would be best for my job role, and are there prerequisites for which course, and which one should I pursue? So for purposes of that being recorded and put on the webpage to help answer those questions in the future, we're going to cover that first. But then we'll spend some time talking about what this course is going to do across its 5 days, kind of the labs that you'll be performing and the work that you'll be doing in the class. We'll also hear from each one of these authors in regards to their perspective, their contributions, and really what they're excited about for this class. So while I'll introduce each one of them as we go, I'm Tim Conway. Sitting next to me, and you'll be hearing from later, is Jeff Shear, who has been working and authoring quite a bit of the material in this class, as well as Jason Deely from BlackBerry, Cylance, and Chris Robinson. Anybody who's kind of been in the ICS community doing work with SANS, you've seen all of these gentlemen at the various ICS conferences and summits, whether it's in North America or abroad at ICS Munich or elsewhere. So without any other further delay, I'm going to move through some of the existing course discussions. So off on the SANS.org website, there is a roadmap. The cybersecurity skills roadmap, the URL is in the bottom of this presentation. And you kind of walk through this graphic, this interactive graphic, where you can expand based on job roles and a skills roadmap of what you're trying to develop for your career. So there's the core techniques, kind of the baseline skills over to the left. And then as you work through kind of this diagram, you end up moving yourself over to the third component here, kind of this crucial skills and specialized roles area. That segment is where kind of the entire, that segment is where the entire ICS set of courses exists. So if you think of SANS like any university with various College of Business, College of Law, College of Engineering, different degree programs, within the SANS courseware, we have containerized things into curriculum, where we have a penetration testing curriculum, a forensics curriculum, a application development and management curriculum, but we specifically have an industrial control systems curriculum that we've been building and working on since late 2012 and early 2013 with our first courses and certifications. So the three existing courses that we have today, ICS 410, ICS 515, and ICS 456, I'm going to do kind of a slide on each, and then we can start talking about ICS 612. So just let me get the advancing here. ICS 410, many of you on this call may be alumni of ICS 410, and you've sort of been waiting for what is the next course that I take. So ICS 410 truly was built as this bridge building foundation course to kind of tie together the IT professionals and practitioners and the operations technology professionals and practitioners that oftentimes have to work together in support of a common process or a common operating environment, and make sure they both understand each other's roles, they both understand the language in use. Oftentimes we'll get a student who's been an information technology professional for years, and now they have to support, or they've been reassigned job duties where they're doing work within a plant floor or an industrial control system environment. And then the other half of the class is often people who've worked in those industrial control system environments, and they're seeing more and more cyber digital assets being added, more integration into traditional IT infrastructure like Active Directory and utilization of DNS and traditional firewall perimeters. So there's a lot each other can learn from the other side of the house, and primarily ICS 410 is that foundation building course with use of a series of hands-on labs and capabilities, but with representative hardware. So with the use of the Velocio PLC and some of the builder code, definitely the theory behind what industrial control systems are doing, tying the cyber to physical world together, is covered throughout that course pretty well. So immediately after we created that course, there was this discussion of we need a certification and a credential so we can ensure that people have a baseline set of skills before we send them off to field environments to ensure that they won't hurt themselves or damage equipment or cause outages. At a bare minimum, they need to understand the kind of drivers and constraints behind working within an industrial control system environment. And that is where we came and worked very hard with industry to develop the GICSP certification, which is kind of a follow-on after the ICS 410 course. Moving on to the next, so staying within the 400 series, this course is ICS 456, focuses on the NERC Critical Infrastructure Protection set of standards. This is something that SANS, within the industrial control system curriculum, we have a number of people who've worked within the power sector, either in transmission, generation, distribution, control center, or all of the above, and in some natural gas operating companies as well. So this set of standards has been very familiar to a good portion of the people within our team. And we started hearing from a number of our customers in regards to the paradigm shift that was happening from the traditional kind of SIP version 1, version 2, and version 3 standards into the new paradigm of SIP version 5, where there was significant paradigm changes and programmatic changes that were creating a lot of confusion technically and from a regulatory perspective in regards to what does the standard mean, what does the requirement mean, and then what does compliance look like from a technical perspective? What do we have to implement? How do we achieve compliance? How do we manage a program that stays compliant? And it really pushed us down the path of authoring this course to help industry with some of those questions and problems, really trying to focus on what the standards mean, why they exist, and why you have to do the various controls, and the how you implement and how you manage a program that would satisfy the requirements. So with that course in place, largely North American focused and electric sector focused, but we have lots of students from around the globe as their own countries are starting to look at doing something similar. They're looking to model their approach after the NERC set of standards. So we often have international students and students from other industries as other industries are looking to regulate as well. We also follow up that course with the kind of the first and only industry certification for critical infrastructure protection specific to NERC, and definitely kind of covering the certification domains of all the various standards as well as audit approaches. The last of our 3 courses is in the 500 level. So again, this may be a course that a number of people on this call are alumni of, and they're kind of looking to where they go next. This is in the 500 series for us, so it involves a little bit more hardware, and that hardware is being utilized to kind of simulate real-world industrial control system protocols. that are in use throughout the course, and this ICS Active Defense and Incident Response course does a tremendous amount kind of on the identification, detection, and working with industrial control system protocols. Authored by Robert M. Lee. It has been in existence for several years, and it's truly for those students that maybe not even at a industrial control system environment, but they are tasked with security monitoring and identification and working with the response teams and kind of trying to find the anomalous behavior and the anomalous communications occurring within a control system environment and responding in a way that supports operations. As with the previous two courses, there is a certification that follows this, the GRID certification, the GIAC Response and Industrial Defense cert, and as identified here on the certification objective, kind of active defense and being able to respond to a targeted attack, utilizing threat intel, and really on the detection, discovery, and monitoring side, as well as the incident response. Great course. All of our industrial control system courses are 5-day courses. And as we move upwards in the numbers from the 400 series to the 500 series to the 600, especially within the industrial control system curriculum, you'll see more and more hardware being added to those courses. So just as a quick depiction of that, if you look at kind of the capabilities of labs and learning objective driven labs, we often hear from students across not just the industrial control system curriculum, but any SANS course, that the content in the slides are very important and they're necessary, especially where there is a certification that's tied. The learning objectives, but being covered by the instructors, but every student learns differently. So some students will be able to consume the slides and listen to what the instructor is saying, and that is the best way that they can learn and just sit back and not focus on any other distractions of doing labs or any hands-on activity. Other students will see it, hear it, and then want to do it to reinforce it. And we see that quite a bit across industrial control system courseware. So quite often we would get student feedback that they're looking for more time with labs or more hands-on labs. And if you look at kind of the objectives of those courses that I just discussed, if you look at the kind of the component of labs being involved in those courses, where they reinforce the material and reinforce learning, if you kind of start from an approach where we may come into a organization and do a 4-hour or a 3-hour workshop where we're just trying to explain what industrial control systems are and why people should care about them, and specifically why we should be focused on adding some cybersecurity capability. That would be on this kind of very low end scale where we're just talking concepts. They're not actually reinforcing it or doing it with anything. Traditionally for us, that would be a workshop, a summit, some kind of dedicated meeting with people who are new to this space. As we move into the kind of more theoretical and demonstrating concepts, simulating protocols, basic hardware components, those would be more of our 400 level courses. And as we move up into the more of the medium complexity, that's where we're leveraging tools and labs and data sets that reflect real world protocols like what we do leverage in ICS 515. Moving into the high capability on this chart, that is kind of where our 612 course will sit. So using real world devices configured in ways that is representative of actual plant floor or process environments, so students can understand why things are engineered the way they're engineered, how to support them in an operating environment, and how to identify potential risks and threats from an adversary, how to monitor those systems and secure them, ultimately with the intent of defending the environment in support of operations. Main goal across all SANS courses, and this one is no different, is ensuring that our students, when class ends, they can go back to work with kind of a book of notes on things that they want to pursue, look into, start performing differently, technologies to pursue to ensure a more secure operational environment. The last component on this slide is kind of this very high level of labs. And for us, that's where our 600 levels courses will continue to use more and more hardware. But ultimately, as we move into the very high space, that is where you'll end up seeing kind of more of a team-based training approach where it's not just a representative environment, but it's a representative workforce with people from different diverse backgrounds and skill sets and job roles, all working towards the same mission. So with that, we understand every person is different, every person learns different, every person needs different kind of training focus areas, and depending on where you are in your career and kind of a competency map from somebody who's brand new to the space, the types of things that they need to learn, maybe a level 1 engineer that's performing some support and maintenance, level 2, that may be a little bit more on a mastery knowledge level, and then up into the level 3 and level 4 where you have expert and technical leaders. Those kind of training needs and learning objectives map fairly well to the 400, 500, 600 level courses, and correspondingly map to the more challenging, more difficult levels of hands-on labs. So the level 3, level 4 engineers that are moving into an ICS612 course, they should expect to be doing on a given day anywhere from 50 to 60% of the course day is going to be hands-on lab activity with, you know, anywhere from 50 to 40% instructor-led content and conversations. This screenshot, just the URL to the left, is a larger job competency and job role mapping poster that we performed a couple of years ago, again, working with a number of different industry representatives. We also understand that specifically within kind of the operations technology role, that there is a mix, so a hybrid set of skills in a person that we're trying to build. So somebody who's working in operational technology, they certainly need to understand the core, a lot of underlying information technology components. They need to understand a significant amount of cybersecurity topics and concepts. Absolutely need to understand the operations components and the operations technology, digital assets that support it. So you end up with an individual kind of that is a mixed set of skills across a number of different domains is what we are working to try to provide. This is a screenshot from an effort that focused on one sector, which was power, and saying, how do we create that person? How do we get those core skills and create a secure power system professional? What does the training programs need to look like? What does that hybrid set of skills need to look like? You could correlate this directly to natural gas, the oil sector, nuclear, water, chemical, manufacturing, same types of hybrid skills needed for somebody to perform well in this job role. Effectively, we need a lot more people like that. We often refer to them in the industry as unicorns, very difficult to find, very difficult to locate, and in our efforts, we are trying to create them. And some who won't align with a unicorn, they would be more comfortable aligning with a Yeti. But in reality, we don't need one or the other. We need a mix of all. So we're trying to create and help all critical infrastructure in building these skill sets into kind of those level 3, level 4 support personnel. I'm going to take a break and stop talking for a minute. As I told you, we have a very unique opportunity with all the instructors and author team for this new course here with us physically. We are 1 month out from beta 1. The entire team here is very excited in regards to what we've created and really anxious to be in front of students. But I can tell you we are also taking every minute of this week to walk through this course without students. So we can make sure that it is as ready as it can be for our first beta with students working through labs and using their own machines and kind of identifying some specific needs that we can't replicate here. But I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Shearer first. I'm going to go off of my headset, so the sound may shift a little bit. We've got all 4 of us kind of jammed in a little conference room here. If we were in our lab, you would be hearing all of our equipment buzzing in the background. But I'm going to let Jeff talk for a little bit, and then we'll turn over to Jason Deely, and then Chris Robinson, and then I'll come back and close out our call here.
All right. Thank you, Tim. My name is Jeff Shearer, and again, I'm extremely happy to be part of this co-authoring team. I think the thing that makes me most excited about this is that whenever you look at a security course and you're focused specifically on a technology or a particular level within an industrial control system, whether it's servers or controllers or whatever, the author normally has spent a lot of time in a very specific area, and they bring that knowledge forward to you. In this particular case, we decided to look at an entire industrial control system environment, kind of the factory environment or plant environment, and leverage knowledge from, I hate using the word experts, but taking people who have a lot of experience in the different levels of the factory environment and actually letting them author that part of the course. So I've spent my career in the industrial control system side. So I have started as a young man in 1985, and I worked for 2 different OEMs, and then I leveraged what I learned as in the OEM community to actually go to work for an automation vendor. And my time at the automation vendor actually allowed me to step out of just looking at specific machines, but actually working with many different type of customers in the US and across the globe. And so I got to see a lot of different processes. I got to see a lot of different types of equipment, a lot of different types of people, which was really the blessing, as I met a lot of people who were willing to share their knowledge with me, and that's what I'm trying to do here. In so much, the control system environment hasn't changed dramatically from the 1980s. If you kind of think about it, the languages that we use to program, the hardware has certainly gotten faster, but the general ideas and methods for coming up with programming to control machines or processes hasn't really changed. But what I found has changed mostly in this environment is how the communication levels and how I/O subsystems have changed, where they've moved out from being singular or together to very distributed control systems. And with that, the programming technologies and even the I/O subsystems running over commercial off-the-shelf technologies like Ethernet versus some proprietary protocols, it's really allowed not only the programmer to be able to bring together the technologies, but now they're being asked to provide data from the control systems up through the enterprise so that stakeholders can make more informed decisions and they can actually work in more of a real time. But what I've seen change there is industrial control system engineers like myself, we were taught, or we spent most of our time learning how to fill tanks or do motion control or things of that nature. And now, added on top of that, we have to start learning about switches, routers, and firewalls and security. And so we've taken just an industrial control system application mindset and moved it out to where we either have to learn networking and learn security, or we have to start working with others who have that skill set. And many times we find that in IT people. And literally, as I've traveled around the US and the globe with these gentlemen that I'm sitting here with, I find that SANS normally attracts IT people who haven't had a lot of hands-on time with industrial control systems. And so my contribution to this class has been building the pods, bringing the pod designs together, and then writing some of the courseware that in the 612 class, you'll be actually programming PLCs, you'll be programming HMIs, some of the things to get familiar so that you understand the challenges of how to network these things together and how to do security. So that is how I added to this course. And again, back to the multi-author position statement is, while I can bring that knowledge, I do have a background in networking, security, in the industrial control system. I certainly can't cover all the levels like these other gentlemen can. So we've taken each one of these sectors, taken each one of these levels. We've contributed the knowledge that we have to the course. And so that as a student, you can leverage all of these, I'm going to call them lessons learned, if you will, throughout the environment. And what I'm hoping, my goal is that as a student comes out of there, there's something that's practical that they could use every day, and they can have conversations with the industrial control system engineers in a more, I'm going to call it a richer vocabulary and a richer discussion about how to actually secure industrial control system assets. And I'll just wrap it up with, there is a lot of excitement on our end to bring this forward, because we're actually using control system components that you would find in your factory. So you'll be actually hands-on with control system assets that you would see in your plant. So if you're going to a class and you want to actually have that rich experience, you need to actually work with the components that you would see in your factory. So with that said, I will turn it over to Jason Deely.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I very much echo everything Jeff has said, and I've been pretty lucky and privileged to work with Jeff over many years, and we've had some very parallel and also different paths that we've taken. One of the things I really think, on top of everything Jeff has said, that this course really is the why. The understanding and digging into the why are these things set up the way they are. Why do we have this type of communication happening? How does this thing actually communicate across? So the idea is to build the skill set so that you can ask those questions and dig through that and understand, the mindset that was put in during the engineering of these systems to really understand, again, the why is it working the way it is, and why was the decision made in the way it was during integration. And all that really comes into extreme use when trying to figure out how we're going to approach not only in securing the environment, but also understanding, the vectors and the threats and risks associated with the environment to be able to work together and move it forward. One is kind of interesting is in my career, being thrown into the wolves essentially, and, essentially having to dig out and understand the glue of these various products and how they work together. In both capacities of IT and OT, there's a lot of underlying activity that happens with the vendor equipment, whether it be software or hardware. And for a lot of times, it's taken for granted by the automation team, just knowing that, this is the tool I use and the tool performs this thing. And I think it's very important that, as technologists, that we need to really ask those questions and say, well, what's actually happening under the hood? Why is these things working the way they are? Because ultimately, it makes us better informed to make the decisions needed in order to better secure these environments, but also to better monitor and respond as well. And I think that's what we're also trying to bring into this course to, play the role of both sides, coming in with open mind that you carry on into your own organizations to be able to really, ask those questions and not be afraid to the fact that you may not know the answer. There's a lot of uniqueness in the way these things are implemented. It could be by the same vendor and done 10 different ways across, 5 different companies. And the point is that it's important to be able to have build a methodology and understanding of how to dig in and really sort that out. So hoping to really bring that in. That's one of the goals that, I'm trying to bring into this as well. And recognizing that these systems are complex, and sometimes even just the mitigation that's available by the vendors may seem like just a simple, just turn that thing on, but understanding that it brings up other complexities as far as how to operationalize those and so forth. So really looking forward to hoping everybody gets excited as we are. I think it's a fantastic group to work with, and everybody's bringing something to the table here. I think it's the most well-rounded. In some cases we're challenging ourselves and really trying to sort out, what this means to us. So if we're doing it on our end to try to make this the best it is, we just hope that you guys come in and have the same level of energy leaving. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. I'm kind of echoing like what everyone's talked about so far. We're all excited here. We're working hard in Utah. It's unfortunately I didn't get early on. I didn't get to go to Arizona and really meet with the team to really hash out some of the details and to start discussing about what was all involved in building it. So Over the past few months, we've been working together, but it's been remotely for me for the most part. But this week was pretty wild to, walk into the building and see Jeff and Tim unloading the gear, and just the amount of gear that we have that's going to undertake for this course. So I think that in itself is pretty impressive that we've come together with SANS to do that, and really have invested a lot of money in the gear that's going to be there for the students to play with, to hopefully not break or at least learn on the thing. So I started my security career about 15 years ago. About 7 years ago, I switched over to the OT side of the house. I was lucky enough to work for an owner operator and was tasked with learning the OT environment. So I think with the team, I kind of bring the IT side of the house to it, especially being the owner operator, coming from that background. So I've actually, as part of the course, I've been able to kind of put on my black hat, and I've been working on a lot of the labs where we're doing attacking the environments. I'm really excited about the course in of itself, because a lot of SANS courses, I think, either focus on the attack side, the defense side, or even the forensic side of the house. I think this course really brings all three of those together. So it's really rounded. I think there's going to be something for everyone, whether you're on the defending side or you're looking to see how an actual real world attacker is going to attack these environments. I think that's really what's going to be the interesting and really kind of showcases what the student's going to see in this course. From that perspective, I think everyone's will be challenged, and as we Jason kind of said, we're a challenge right now, trying to make sure that these are real world experiences, and this is how it actually operates. We're bringing some of our experience, so I think some of the attacks and what we see out in the environment in the field is what is actually happening. So this isn't necessarily theoretical, it's actually stuff that we've seen in the real world. I think with that, I think I'm pretty much going to turn it back over to Tim, but thank you.
Yep, and all of these gentlemen will be available for questions. So I know Carol has posted to the chat that any of the questions that you have, just go ahead and send them in. She will moderate questions when we're done talking, which we're getting closer and closer to, because frankly, all four of us need to get back to work on the on validating all of the labs. But a couple of things, so just specifically about the course. Hold on one second. I believe you are no longer seeing my, give me a minute. Okay. Working through the different course days. So in day one, kind of looking at this 5-day course, it may stand out a little bit that we only have 4 boxes on the screen, but I'll explain that to you in a second. So day one, we truly start, if you are familiar with the Purdue model, we kind of start near the bottom and work our way up throughout the progression of the course days. So kind of level 0, level 2, local process is really what we focus on in day one. Each student is provided a student kit, and that is a student kit that is a pretty capable and expandable set of gear that the students get to keep and take home with them. So kind of as a long-term progression of this course, after you've come and attended, we will be working with alumni and other industry kind of practitioners to create kind of ongoing DIY projects and other things that you can do with the student kits that you received in 612. So I was just talking to Jason Dealey on the driveway this morning, and we're hoping he will take the student kit and teach us all how to use it with his own smoker application, so we can monitor and control temperature and process and send some alerts into the house so the kids can take action when the smoker needs attention. But we use it within the course. Primarily kind of day one, we tie it into a shared pod that is utilized by 2 students at a desk. So each student has their own kit, then they tie into a kind of segment of the local process, which then ties into the head end, all the equipment that's at the front of the classroom. So you'll be using the local student kit as well as the equipment at your table throughout all 5 days of the course. But also on day one, kind of looking at architecture, process weaknesses, a lot of local IO, and any of the kind of communication flows and communication maps. Moving into day 2 is really where we tie kind of the systems that were at the student tables to all of the other student tables throughout the room and to the equipment on the front of the classroom. And this is really kind of our system of systems days day, where we kind of tie all these independent systems together into one operating system. Focus a lot on level 3 of the Purdue model here. So again, continuing to work our way up. The student local process and interconnectedness and interdependence, as well as a variety of different vendor security models and kind of the industrial DMZ approach. Day 3, we get a little bit more into, from a defense perspective, kind of the network infrastructure focus and securing this connected process, secure plant design, and just operating across where there exists a tremendous amount of trusted communications and doing that in a way that is secure and defendable. As we move into day 4, more focused on kind of system management. Lots of questions here, lots of capabilities that are kind of coming into industry at this point, where we can look at doing kind of logging and collection within the industrial control system environment, performing monitoring and alerting within an industrial control system environment effectively, and ultimately when things need to be checked for a potential incident or recovered after a fault or a failure, looking at ensuring system integrity and industrial control system device validation prior to reconstituting it. So that's kind of our day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4 process of how the course flow goes. Moving into day 5, this is truly, whenever we would do a new control system from facility and utility that I used to work at, we would always have their traditional kind of factory acceptance tests, site acceptance tests. But the things that we enjoyed the most was there was an entire series for a couple of weeks that were called unstructured tests, where we were allowed to do whatever we wanted to the systems to see how it would respond, from kind of removing power supplies, removing memory, removing devices, adding new devices, and duplicating anything our minds could think of. And truly kind of in this day 5 is an unstructured day with some level of structure, of course, but basically the students will come in kind of on day 5 and the instructor team will have modified the environment in the evening of day 4. And the students will have to troubleshoot kind of the list of complaints from the operators or from peers or process alarms to identify where a misconfiguration is, where a fault is, where a device may have failed, where there may be some rule sets in error. So not necessarily direct step-by-step lab driven, but outcome driven, more what they would experience when they return to work. So these are the list of things that aren't working, and based on what you've learned in day 1 through 4, start working through kind of traditional troubleshooting processes to identify where the issues may be and correcting them. We will then move into a secondary phase to that of if those types of issues could be achieved through misconfigurations or through device failure, they could also be targeted that way to, again, achieve that outcome from an adversary. So we'll talk about that from a targeting perspective to achieve the same result. And then ultimately with the last half of the day, we'll move into a challenge exercise with a scored competition with individuals kind of working through challenge exercises individually, and ultimately having kind of a challenge coin for the course and a prize for the top winners in that 5th day. That is the flow of the 5-day course. We are working really, really hard within the industrial control system curriculum to stay within a 5-day course model. As we know, adding a 6th day or asking people to come in on weekends and travel differently, especially with a lot of process environments or critical infrastructure sectors. With a lot of our students who are on call and service on-call rotations. Adding a 6th day makes things a little bit more painful. Just kind of ICS612 by the numbers here, so a brief infographic across the 4 of us here. I tried to tally this up and I stopped counting at a certain point, but across the 4 of us, we are over 80 years of kind of experience in this space across a number of different sectors, and specifically Jason and Jeff have worked in just about every type of industrial control system facility that I can think of or process environment that I can think of. And with Chris and myself both being more from the asset owner and operator side, just a lot of diverse opinions and a lot a lot of diversity and experience, but certainly a number of years that all of us are starting to feel and show in our gray beards and in how we walk around when we're unloading all this heavy equipment. Working across these first kind of 4 days, over 35 hands-on labs. So as I mentioned, there's some days where we're 60–70% hands-on labs in the course day, and then there's other days where we're about 50%, but there's a lot of hands-on activity for each student attending. So over 35, and then as mentioned again on the 5th day, really being more of a unstructured challenge, not necessarily lab focused where you're following step by step. So true number of labs, activities that you need to think about and perform is probably well into the 50s, if you include that 5th final day. Definitely throughout 2020, so talking about where this course is going, as I know some of you on this call, or some of you who may be listening to this recording later, you may not be located here in the US or in North America, and you've got some questions about when we're coming to your part of the neighborhood. We intend in 2020 to build additional sets of hardware and bring these to different geographies and leave the equipment there for course runnings and instructors in that part of the world. With our first current plan, depending on beta progression through beta 1 and beta 2 this year, but would be mid-2020 with ICS612 being offered at SANS Europe in Munich, and then some additional opportunities to follow on in the APAC regions. But definitely starting mid next year and beyond, we're hoping to support multiple geographies across EMEA and APAC. Throughout the course, I wanted to put something in here, but I got to a point where I stopped tracking tools and stopped tracking the amount of things we have you working on throughout these labs. Primarily, we'll be using 3 virtual machines, and on those 3 virtual machines, so one of them being Windows, that will be loaded with all of the necessary software, licenses, and tools that you'll need to interact with all the industrial control system equipment, which is a large suite of software that is just by itself a great thing to have exposure and experience with as you're performing these labs. But also the student kits, all the necessary software for display building and for logic building, all included on the Windows virtual machines. Moving over to the Kali distribution that we are using for a number of the attack scripts and activity that we're performing in those labs. And then we're very excited to release in this course the Relics virtual machine distribution that Dragos has been working with SANS to make sure that they can provide a virtual machine distribution that will support some of our courses and some of our labs, and it will provide access to some of their tools that they have added into that virtual machine distribution. That's really kind of first and only virtual machine distribution that will be available publicly and offered in our courses that is really geared towards and specific to industrial control system environments and users. So too many tools to count and too many software applications to count, but all loaded within the virtual machine environments that we provide to the students in the course. Key things that you need to know. So from a follow-up perspective, our very first beta is coming up in about 4 weeks, September 17th in Houston. That beta is waitlisted and sold out. So if you were hoping to make it to the very first beta, I apologize, but that has been filled. The second beta is approaching being filled and waitlisted. That is in Washington, D.C. at the SANS Cyber Defense Initiative, CDI National Conference. So that is December 12th through December 16th in Washington, D.C. After beta 1 and beta 2 completes, the full run of the course and out of beta will be at the SANS ICS Summit in Orlando, Florida. So those are our current plans, and we have about 15 minutes left for Q&A. I'm going to turn over to Carol here in just 1 second, but I sort of skipped past my own author statement, and it's something that I wanted to save towards the end here. That as I look to, from an asset owner and operator, being a student in SANS courses through a good portion of my career and providing kind of private dedicated training and running those courses at our organization for all the people within my team. My kind of experience with SANS and working with Alan Paller and some of the leadership here has always been, you know, they kind of look at what we're doing and they say, is the training making a difference? Is the training working? Is it helping you with the problems that your team are facing? And as I transitioned to become a SANS kind of employee, contributor, instructor, author 6 years ago, it's really been a question that's been in my head with every course that we make, every certification that we make. And in this course, we've really asked it to the level of every single lab. With the amount of hardware and with the amount of gear that we have in this room, we could have a variety of other labs and have a variety of other activities. And we've really looked at each one and tried to look at it from that perspective of, we have 5 days, let's identify the things that are going to help the practitioners, the vendors, the integrators, the people who are going to work in this space as much as possible when they attend this course, that they can return to work and immediately make a difference. And as we look at that as being the goal, we say, well, certainly if we're prioritizing by order of importance, what is going to make the most difference, there's no one human that exists that is the expert in that area. You will often find at a industrial control system conference or at a conference where they're introducing somebody as a ICS or operations technology subject matter expert, you'll often see that person cringe as soon as they're labeled as an expert. Because just about everyone who's been in this field for 10, 20 years, we all know what we don't know. We know the level to the things that we don't know from the engineering side or from the operations side or from cybersecurity side or from an attacker or forensics in ICS or pen test in ICS. The field is extremely broad, and even trying to get somebody that is that hybrid skill set of cybersecurity, IT knowledge, OT knowledge, and understanding operations. They may understand the operations for a particular sector or an environment that they work in. And after they've been in it for 15, 20 years, they may understand it fairly well. But then if they move over to a different sector, they're starting to relearn all over again. So the most exciting piece to me about this course is the fact that we have multiple authors that have come from a variety of different backgrounds and diversity to bring in different perspectives on what matters the most and what we have to get in the minds of our students from a prioritization perspective, what's the most important that'll help them when they return to work. I think that's probably the most exciting thing about this class, and I just can't wait to get it in front of students to hear which labs they could do without and which labs they really, really want more of, so we can start tweaking and tuning across beta 1 and beta 2 and really bring the best course possible to industry at the ICS Summit in March. So with that, Carol, I'll leave this screen up, but if you have any questions that you want to go through, we still have about 10 minutes left. If anybody has questions, please type them in the chat window for Carol. Carol will read them off to us, and if there are no questions, then I think we can close 10 minutes early, but I'll leave that to Carol.
All right, we do have several questions ready, so I'll just jump right in. The first one asks, Jeff mentions that this will help people from an IT background understand ICS, but will this course also help ICS experienced attendees understand the IT side, more like ICS 410?
So this is Jeff, so I'll take the first crack at it. The answer is absolutely. So from an ICS perspective, if you're actually doing industrial control system work, your head's down, you're trying to achieve a particular goal and process. And just like that, IT professionals are trying to achieve a secured level and achieve their goals for you or with you. What's going to happen is as you sit through that class and you progress through the days, you're going to move from lower level industrial control system talking to industrial control systems, and you're going to learn about the networking pieces, and you're going to continue to move up through historians, you're going to move across the DMZ, and you're going to learn what IT professionals are doing to help you secure your industrial control system. Because at the end of the day, there's a process that's being controlled by a controller or some type of industrial control system, and everything starts kind of right there. That's where the process or the product is being changed and controlled. And the intent of security is to keep that processor running, keep making your product. And as you go through the days, you actually get to sit in the IT space and see and understand and use their tools as well. So
that is a question that this author team asked each other when we were designing the labs and trying to identify, hey, any environment that we've been in, there's obviously a tremendous amount of hardware, equipment, gear that we need to get if we want to teach industrial control system practices, principles, foundation, and do a number of hands-on labs. But at the same time, some of the newer systems that you're getting are coming with, Active Directory integration, relying on DNS, moving away from host files, getting into more segmented environments with a lot of traditional kind of industrial control system protocols being funneled through firewalls and various kind of perimeters, that we knew we had to bring all that infrastructure, all that architecture as well, and design labs around using all of those things as we move up the stack from level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, and then up higher into external communications and remote access and capabilities for monitoring and change management, everything else that's layered on top of a process environment in a current system that's being deployed or supported. We knew we needed all that equipment, all that infrastructure, and labs that focused on those various components. So answer is definitely yes. I think, Carol, if you can give us an idea on how many questions there are, we can move to a lightning round where we don't each provide an answer to every question. But if there's only a few questions out there, we can make sure that we provide kind of as much input as possible.
At this point, there's just 2 more. Oh,
okay.
Now 3.
Okay.
Do you think that GIAC certification related to this course will be available for the next year?
No, I don't. So this is an area where we will need to work with GIAC kind of hand in hand. So there will need to be some investments in regards to how we make a course like this that is very hands-on, how we can actually assess and test that in a traditional testing center. So moving beyond kind of multiple choice questions from a knowledge, skill, and ability perspective, moving from what knowledge did you learn from the class, what's your ability to recall it, but moving more into a capability of what you learned and acquired. So there's some additional things. GIAC is absolutely fantastic. They have lots of ideas on how to pursue and get this added into existing testing center environments, some unique ways for us to write and author questions and ensure that we're actually measuring the capability or the hands-on level of what was learned and what was taught, from a troubleshooting, from an identification, from a build, from a design and engineering approach, everything that we cover in the course, just working with that team. But truly, we want the course to be stable, meaning beta 1, we're going to identify some labs that need to be added. We're going to identify some labs that need to be changed or removed. Beta 2, there'll be more learning as we have a broader student audience. Throughout the first year, there may be some more things that we continue to add, change, and modify. And at that point, kind of when we're looking at bringing this course overseas, international, that's kind of our next step in this journey. After we've handled the geography issues, then I think we'll start talking about a credentialing side where we can validate skill sets, and working real hard with GIAC in Q3, Q4 of 2020, and hopefully doing some beta testing in 2021 for an exam.
All right, thanks. Are labs aligned with a specific industry, for example, electrical, building, oil, and gas?
No. So we tried really hard to not go down any particular industry path from oil or from natural gas or from electric. Truly, the concepts and principles that we're teaching and covering and talking about are across all sectors. Definitely, there's different communications timing and scan rates and how things are engineered and designed that we will cover in the course, different architectures. from a substation environment, for example, where you may have implemented a very specific architecture, but you've got devices talking high speed within the same level, but they're miles and miles apart. So what that looks like from an architecture perspective, those are all things that we cover the principles, the foundation, and then certainly with the diversity of the author and instructor team can handle kind of questions and specific case studies within the classroom as well. But nothing is really designed around a particular industry. It's really kind of open from all industries should be fairly well represented in regards to what we're covering and doing.
All right, thanks. Are the students paired up in the course to work together on student kits, or are they independent with their own kit and labs? And the last question is, will there be shirts? We love shirts.
We will take that action item. For beta 1 and beta 2, we will make a shirt that the students help contribute to the course. So the answer to the first question is yes to all, meaning there's 100% kind of we try to make it as independent as possible, where each student is kind of working on their own student kits, working on their own firewall rule sets, working on their own configs, working on their own logic, performing kind of their own step-by-step and working their way through it. But there are some components where truly a skill set that they need to understand is how they take their piece of the process and work with other individuals who are responsible for another part of that same process. So there are several labs where them and their desk partner will be working on labs together. And then there are other labs, especially in the day 5 troubleshooting, where really the class is working together kind of as a group to each person kind of from the overall approach of the process mission, identifying what needs to be resolved and fixed, then working towards their desk, what parts of their desk with them and their classroom mate need to be resolved to fix the overall process problems, and then down to their own individual config. So kind of the all us me approach of the entire classroom working together, and then the individual desk, 2 students, and then the individual person. It's a mix across the board. But we do try to do as much of the individual learning as possible across our labs. But there is a need to do kind of that joint experience as well to prepare people for when they're returning to work, where they don't just work as an individual.